Today we have an ex-FreeNow VP of Data with us who will share his experience from studying bioinformatics all the way to building his own business for consulting C-suite executives on data and AI. Welcome, Tim Wiegels. If you want, just introduce yourself. I'm happy to have you here and looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, Mario. How are you doing? Thanks for having me. You actually just put, I think, 20 years into a very short sentence. That's quite nice. Yeah, hi, I'm Tim. I've been doing something with data for almost 20 years now. Did a PhD at some point in bioinformatics, which I think you would call data science nowadays, but the buzzword didn't exist back then. So either I'm old or the buzzword is new. I think it's the latter. No, the first one. And I've been working in academia. I've been working in gaming. I've been working in social networks. I worked in an incubator for health tech. And then finally, I was the vice president data at FreeNow. So every time you open the app and the taxi is more expensive than you expected, you're welcome. And nowadays, I realized that people management is great. So I realized two things in my life. I realized academia is very interesting for other people. I also realized that people management is a great job for other people. So I decided that I don't want to be the VP anymore. I want to be someone who really just does strategy and consults people and does hands-on work or maybe work with their brain, but less feedback talks and so on.
Okay, very interesting beginning. Already you dropped a lot of my most favorite buzzwords into the call. So I'm happy to see what we will go there. But maybe to start with a let's say interesting point, because I always like to ask people like kind of what they are hoping to see in the future of AI, and like preferably we will then speak about like how you and me and maybe other people can become part of that. But if you could make like one bold claim or educated guess about what the future of AI and data will look like, and like maybe how you will participate in it, share with us what you think.
That's a tough one. I think 2 or 3 years ago, what I've said, I want to have tools that help me work a lot faster. But we have that already, right? I think that's a good start. To be honest, I don't know where it's going, and I think it would be a little bit presumptuous to say I know what's happening next 2 years. I really like the way I can interact with AI right now and interact with my data. I would really like to be this to become even more creative, even more intuitive, and even more easy for all the people. Because I think right now we're at a level that sounds arrogant now, but people like us can use Gen AI and everything really, really well because we know how modeling works, we know how data works. But I think it's still something that isn't really graspable or really easy for everyone. So I think my or your grandma probably couldn't just go there and use everything as easy as we do it today. So I think it should become even more, less feeling like AI. And let's see how that goes. And on the other side, when you ask me what I want AI-wise and data, now it's more AI-wise in the future. I want to get more entertainment out of that, right? So I really like this whole VR stuff. I want holodecks. I think that's the thing I'm waiting for.
Okay, crazy. Holodecks I actually never really took a look at. But the part that you mentioned before, I think is quite interesting because we just talked about it, right? Like how the interview process for data scientists are. And like I was actually asking myself, like, are you actively hiring people sometimes, or are you part of the hiring process?
No. Well, I'm part of the hiring process. And I think you know where you're getting to, because we started to, I don't do case studies anymore where I send people something. Okay. Because any data science stuff you can now send someone, you can easily solve with Gen AI. So I really changed to when I do interviews, it's not on site, but it's really like this in a one-to-one or face-to-face interview.
Okay, and the reasoning behind that is what exactly? Because it can be helpful to use AI, right? I mean, you said it yourself, right? You use it. I also use it. So I would not say it's like it's a bad practice in that sense, right? Because it's part of the reality.
Yeah.
But what are you trying to get out of the situation where you maybe are with people in a room?
I want to see how people react to questions and how they, the thing about this is everyone can use AI. That's easy, right? I mean, everyone can do this. This is a great tool. But the most important thing is you have to understand the concept behind it. If you understand the concept of your work, if you understand the creative process of your work and everything else, perfect. Use AI as much as you want, but I want to see that you can do that. And I mean, in former times, you did stuff like programming case studies where you say, hey, I need you to code this model. Please write me an RFM model with clustering and everything. Dude, that's something that takes me 10 minutes to build this in ChatGPT with the perfect code. And that's not useful anymore. So it's really for me more like, tell me the concepts. And funnily, I also did this already before because I was always, when I was the vice president data, part of the recruiting process. And everything else happened before, right? My teams decided it's a good data engineer, it's a good data scientist, they are technically versed. I always ask them, because that's for me even more important, what's the project you're most proud of and why? And what did that solve for the business, right? Because this whole business acumen thing, and I mean, I said this already 5 years ago, our jobs are something, you can study that, yeah, great, you can do a PhD in that, but you could also just sit on your computer for 10 weeks and learn a lot of tutorials and read a lot of stuff because it's all there, right? But the thing is, you really have to understand how to use this and how to use this to improve business problems, full stop.
Yeah. So instead of asking nowadays, you're in like, how do you solve this coding challenge, or how do you implement like a random forest? The question is more, why did you implement a random forest and what did it fix, right?
Yeah, or even better, look at stuff like search pricing at FreeNow. How would you implement that? What's the concept behind this? Why is this something that needs machine learning? What kind of machine learning would you use? Stuff like this. Yeah. And it's not important. I mean, that you can always push out all these things. If someone would say I would use a neural network, this person is anyways out because that shows that you don't have any idea. And it's not necessary to know the exact method, right? For me, it would be totally fine to say, hey, to do this, I have to understand how many people want a taxi, how many taxis are available. Then I need to find some kind of imbalance or balance modeling. And then I would probably start doing literature research to find out which model works best. Yeah. And maybe I use ChatGPT for that, fine. But it's really more like understand what's really behind this. And for me, it's also more important that data scientists nowadays can explain the algorithms and explain the models and the reasoning behind that very easily.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because I was like thinking multiple times about the title of a data scientist, because in the last years, it was always more like you were like a data related programmer, right? Because that was what was tested of you, whether you can program. But I like how you think, because it's more about understanding the problem space and like figuring out which methods, like what type of statistics is applicable, what is not applicable, what makes sense, because there can of course be a lot of things that can go absolutely wrong when you have the wrong assumption, right? So that's I think that's a very healthy way of looking at this. Hope that other people will see it like this as well.
And the thing is also all these titles. I think the only title that makes sense in our area is data engineer. I think that you can halfway understand. Yeah, they do some kind of engineering on the data. But to be honest, I mean, sometimes data scientists are just better data analysts. Sometimes they do ML ops. Sometimes they do machine learning engineering. Yes. And for me, this whole area is so it's all and nothing, right? That's that's the issue. So I would really say never. For me, it's also important, if from my point of view, there's data scientists and machine learning engineers. That's two different ways of working with data. And the most important thing, what you just said, is also they both also have to be product managers. I think everyone who's working with this kind of stuff needs to be able to, you're building data products. You have to manage that properly and understand how product management works.
Yes. Yeah. 100% agree. Yeah. And it would be interesting to understand, because, right, I already said in the very intro, you're actually like a bioinformatician, if that's the right title for people who studied that. And it would be interesting to kind of like understand when during that journey you kind of notice, hey, that could be like a direction I could go to, and what did you do to then ultimately do that?
That's actually funny, because if you look at data people in my age bracket, data scientists, data leaders and whatever, there's a lot of people with the background of, there's no one with a background of data, because the background, you couldn't study data back then, right? It was something else. You have a lot of people that studied physics. You have a lot of people that studied something like media informatics, economical informatics, or all these, we called it the hyphen informatic or the hyphen computer science study courses. And for me, it was always quite clear that I want to do something with data wasn't there back then, but with computers and with something that's a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, that's because I was a very, very lazy guy in school and had a lot of better things to do. But there were 3 courses that always worked out, irregardless what I did, how drunk I got, how rarely I went to school. And this was computer science, economics, and biology. So for me, it was clear I have to do something like this. So I actually started computational economics at a Fachhochschule. I'm not sure what the English word is. At a University of Applied Science. Applied Science, right? And did this for 6 weeks and realized this is a little bit below what I expected to learn. So I stopped this and had fun for half a year more. Maybe I also wasn't ready to really study. And then I studied bioinformatics. And that was quite interesting because I was always interested in research and stuff and academia in general. And this was cool because, to be honest, that was data already, right? It's exactly what we do. You have a lot of data sets, you have stuff you have to understand which KPIs are important. We didn't call this KPI, obviously, but it was like you use data, you form the data in a different way. Either it's something which becomes a 3D structure afterwards, or it's insights you gather because you did some kind of experiment. It's all the same, right? And in the end, it's really bioinformatics and all these other things where solving real-world problems, subject matter problems with computer support. And back then you call this informatics, but it's actually big data work. And to be honest, I let myself, what's the English word for that? I let myself float a bit. So I studied bioinformatics. That was great. I worked in a cinema next to that. I lived in the big city. And I was like, this is a nice job. Let's do this. And when I finished my thesis, or when I was close to finishing my thesis, I was like, what do I do now? Do I go to a pharmaceutical company and become the computation biologist coder there, or what do I do? And then there was this PhD project close by, also in Hamburg. And to be honest, the only reasons why I did this was it was not at a university, so I didn't have to teach. It was at a private institute, which meant I got a stipend and I didn't have to pay taxes, so I got a lot more money than everyone else. And the project was also interesting. And I was like, hey, I can do a PhD, try it. Why not? I mean, I don't know what I want to do anyways. I don't want a 9-to-5 job for sure. And then I did this. And then I realized more and more in this time, because we did research, but what we did more was build a software product. Nowadays, you would call this SaaS, software as a service, but it was really like physicists, biologists, chemists, pharmacists could use this to resolve protein structures. So this pharmaceutical stuff that you want to know what the protein structure looks like, and then you can put something in a pocket so the protein dies, which is quite important for basic research. And what we realized quite quickly was Tim is the best person to talk to people. So I halfway led this project and I traveled over the whole world to do stakeholder management and requirements management on their real world problems, and then solved this with our tool. Yeah, did this. And also did this in the postdoc because it was quite nice. PhD project about some stuff with pattern recognition and bullshit. Yeah, I don't even know what it's called. The only thing I remember was that the tool was called the Protein Nucleotide Structure Extender, or PNS Extender. My Dr. Vater liked this a lot. It was, dad jokes. And we were very, very grown up back then. And then I did a postdoc and realized, this is great. Academia is not my thing. I mean, it's really like, I like this developing stuff, building stuff, solving real world problems with, I think we could call it data back then already, because we worked with big protein databases, and I used this stuff to improve the models we built. And then I started trying to apply for something, which took ages. And I think nowadays when someone applies for a job with me and has a PhD, I'm probably the most unfriendly person and grilling them the most, because when you go out of academia, you have no fucking idea about the real world. And that's the case. it was really for me like, what am I doing actually? I'm doing data science, or I'm not sure what it's the data engineering a bit. So I looked for data science jobs and started becoming a data scientist. I actually was a data scientist for 4 weeks. Then when we realized that I should rather lead the projects of like TV tracking and marketing attribution and stuff. And I think there was a very interesting discussion between me and my boss back then. And she was like, Tim, your programming is good. That's really good. And nothing against this. But other people can do this much better and enjoy this much more.
Yeah.
Next week, you go to the CEO and explain him what we're doing. And I was like, good. And story of my life. That's actually how it worked out. I still like to do a lot of coding stuff. I still like to write SQL code. I like to write data pipelines. But for me, this is more a means to an end.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy to go into massive meetings where people are like, oh, everything is broken. We have no fucking idea how to deal with stuff. Our marketing is wrong. Our data is wrong. And then I'm the person sitting in there was like, what are you missing? What's the problem? And then we build this. I think this is still the thing I really, really enjoy. So to be honest, it was not really deciding to do data, but this was the kind of jobs we did when we went out of university back then. And we were also the only people that really fit on these jobs because everyone wanted data scientist, machine learning, blah, blah, blah. Who has a university education about this stuff? People that studied something which is, obviously not data because it didn't exist.
Yeah. Okay. Understand. Interesting, because I would say probably we almost had a very similar first interaction with the topic of data science. Like you had it because it was what you wanted to do. Actually, I had a period in my life where I was working for Save the Children, and I was explaining to other people what they are doing. But there was one time in the cafeteria where I talked to some guy, and he basically explained me that he also studied bioinformatics, and I got very scared because he told me how to create like very bad viruses with computers. But I mean that at the end of the day is part of it, right? And it's good that these things exist, and it's good that you took maybe a path where you try to contribute to a positive impact, right, with it. But it's still also important to acknowledge that there's also a lot of risks associated to all of this.
I mean, that's funny because we didn't build bad viruses, so our tool was actually also used in biotech, which is quite nice. So in some way, I'm responsible for the COVID vaccine in a very, 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 very tiny way. But that's also something we did, right? So we also had a tool that built the ligands, which are the viruses or the inhibitors for protein structure. So you can do both things, but you usually just inhibit bad proteins and don't inhibit good proteins. That's the way you should do it.
Interesting. And maybe because I already introduced the topic a bit, is there something specifically where you would say, because I mean, it's fun for you probably as well to always speak about how great everything becomes because of AI, and like we can use now analytics to figure out cool things. But is there something, maybe especially from your now also work, having dealt with lots of companies, where you would say that's something where we, in Germany, but also Europe, maybe even worldwide, should definitely think about how to solve these types of problems related to AI, to data science? Is there something on your mind that?
Yeah. I mean, I have a great story about this. I went to a conference. I did a lot of politics stuff back then, worked with the EU and worked with the Bundesregierung, just to see how we can use data and AI. And there was this very interesting panel where I was sitting with 5 women and 1 guy from the Netherlands. And this was about mobility, how mobility changes us, how we can use data and AI to improve mobility. And this guy had a very, very good model about which walkways in a small Dutch city were the most taken ones and the most favorite ones. And then he showed pictures of these. Nice pictures of this park, of nice streets. And he also showed a picture of this very dark alley, which was, I think, 50 meters long, but totally dark. But you could very easily connect 2 big streets. So people used this a lot. And then I asked him, dude, did you actually make sure that your data is diverse and not just built on, I'm not sure, males in their 20s, because we don't give a shit whether we walk through this.
Yeah.
But if you ask any of the women here in this room, I don't think they would favor this walkway. And he was like, no. And I think this is really the biggest thing which I think we have to be aware of. Sometimes we can't solve it, right? But that was also something we tried at FreeNow, because we wanted to also build better recommendations. What you should use now. Should you use a taxi? Should you drive with your own car? Or car sharing, or take a scooter, for everyone. And we realized pretty quickly any kind of recommendations we're doing is tailored to mid-40 cis males.
Mm-hmm.
Just because this was the main amount of our customers, right? Because obviously taxis are usually bought by the man, or men are still more likely to be in consulting jobs or high-paid jobs where you use a lot of taxis. So our data was great, but it was totally skewed because we didn't know who's male, who's female. And yeah, I mean, another example, we built this recommendation for good and bad weather, right? That was easy because we recommended scooters to people, e-scooters, when the weather was nice. Obviously, we didn't do this to business customers because we knew the segment business customer, but I had no idea who was male and female. So that's really something. I mean, you can call this AI ethics or something like this.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to make sure that the models you are building are not just totally skewed to one certain target group.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. There's actually a paper I read it yesterday, I think it was, where they tried to build. It was also about fairness of AI.
Yeah, that's even better.
And if I'm not completely wrong, I have to check. But they basically built. I think they called it multiverse approach, where they basically run 15,000 different AI models with different types of data decisions, basically, right? Like, do you exclude it? Do you balance out something? But if I'm not completely wrong, I think that they said that at the end of the day, for example, for specific things where, let's say, us who are, especially those who are very, aware of all of these potential biases, male or a specific race, but they actually figured out that in a lot of cases, like if you, for example, get rid of something, because you're saying that should not be, or that's like a protected attribute or something like this, that it didn't really change what came out of it. Even though, right, the let's say the people who are initiators of this type of approaches, right, obviously say you must do it, otherwise everything is biased. So it would be very interesting to see, maybe let's say future studies on that, what of the fairness approaches we have actually are fair and don't just feel fair, you know what I mean? Because it always feels great to be inclusive and fair, but if it doesn't really change anything, or you maybe even miss something,
then it doesn't matter. And I mean, that's also the thing, right? It might be the case that all the other data points you have already are good proxies for this, right? That you maybe know how. I mean, we always knew what kind of tours people are doing, where they go from A to B. This might already implicate your, I'm not sure, your gender, your group, or whatever. So but I think it's important to really think about this and not just think, hey, this data is perfect, push it out.
Yeah. Interesting. And do you ever, because that's something that I recently, not recently, but in the last, let's say 1 year or something like this, I read more and more about, and before I never heard it, never in university or something like this. But it's this idea of not doing just predictions, but the concept of causal AI or causal relationship finding. Is there something that you see in companies currently being used? Because I know at university it comes up a lot and more, and especially in Hamburg, there are also some researchers who push this quite a bit.
I mean that there's, you mean stuff like causal interference, right?
For example,
yeah. I mean that is, I see. Well, a lot of companies use it. None of them know they use it because it's usually part of stuff like incrementality modeling or marketing mix modeling that uses causal interference. So, for example, my friends from Exatriba, now Funnel, they also use this in their marketing mix modeling modeling and models.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, interesting. But you would not say it's like something like, because I have the feeling nowadays everyone kind of knows, okay, there's like AI predictions, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone understands maybe what that means really, but they know the term at least.
Yeah.
And they know kind of what you do it for. But I have the feeling that for this, like, the differentiation between a prediction and what an inference or causal inference is, I have the feeling most people don't really get the difference.
No.
So far.
I think most people would still call this a prediction or a forecast.
Yeah.
Or maybe not forecast, but something happens and this is implied by this, or this is the result of that.
Yeah. But it's actually quite interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because there's one professor which I also have a bit of connection nowadays to, who researches quite a bit about that. And like he put up one, I think it was on Harvard Business Review or MIT Sloan Review, where basically like explained that this can be used for what if decisions, right? Like trying to say, okay, if you do this, how much impact will it have on something? And I think especially for businesses, right, that's like what I would say businesses actually wanted, right? They don't want you give it like the value X and then you get some Y out of that and you don't know if it's true or not. But you actually are looking for this. So yeah, let's see how that will evolve.
No, but it's funny because that's really used in this incrementality and market mix modeling tools, because this is then the place where you are looking into this tool and say, hey, if I would have done this, or if this would have been different, what would have been the outcome?
Yeah.
And this is, people still think that's a prediction, right? And it feels like this, but yeah, that's it's being used much more, but I mean always in the marketing space, because I think it's usually the space in a business that uses this data stuff or uses new data methods or scientific methods the soonest.
Yeah. And I mean, I would consider this, and we both kind of agreed on that this is kind of an overlooked area, I would say, or at least like it's a bit of an unfamiliar space. But is there anything else, maybe something where you would even say that's maybe rather an unpopular opinion, where you would say that it's an overlooked either area of data science, AI engineering, or maybe also positions? Because, right, there's this paper and this Harvard like article that said like data scientist is the sexiest job. Everyone now wants to be an AI expert and whatever. But do you see any other roles where you would say, hey, I would love if that would be more known and people should take care more of these types of things? Are there any things that you could come up with?
I would at first say the job of data scientist and machine learning engineer will die pretty quickly. So I think we won't have data scientists or machine learning engineers in the next 10 years. And that's just because these kind of skills will be so normal then that you will probably have a data engineer that's an ML engineer at the same time, and the whole data science stuff will be done by data analysts or whatever you want to call this then, data managers. I think one of the things that's not really AI related, more data related, but is the most important job for me right now, because I work in a lot of smaller, I usually start teams. I do this a lot. And I think the most important job is analytics engineer. Because that's really, AI is great. It's awesome to have data scientists. If you start a data team or if you start looking at the data in your company, you rarely need someone who builds who builds models. You need someone who builds a data model.
Yeah.
And that usually means you need someone who understands the business problem and can also write data pipelines. I think that's really important, because anything AI-based we're doing, the most important thing is really understand what you have and need. Otherwise, it's shit in, shit out. So, yeah.
Okay. It's interesting because I think you're the second person who brought up something similar. And also like the governance part, like making sure that the quality is up on par, at least to some degree. What was your thought process when I said that?
It's a necessary evil for me. So maybe it's a personality type thing, but I really hate data governance and all this stuff, right? I mean, the thing is, most of the people should just be smart, right? You should understand how things work. You should do your data in a qualitative way. People should understand in a company that if suddenly the ETL fails, in 99% of the cases, that's not the fault of the data team, but of the data producers, which are usually the product team or the marketing team or anyone else. And it's an important job, but I hope AI will solve stuff like data governance, data quality quite soon. And I mean, there are already good tools, right? There's stuff like Great Expectations or Anodot, which really you can just chuck on your ETL and it will tell you how qualitative the data is you're doing. And then it's DBT. I mean, honestly, my biggest pain at FreeNow was to build a data catalog. Tried this for 2 years. All the tools back then were awful. They were really, really shit, and they're not sexy. They're not interesting. No one wants to do this, right? Yes, we need this, but no one wants to look into this data catalog because it feels like a wiki from the early 90s. It's like blah. And we just actually needed this for lineage. And when I started freelancing, I worked with DBT for the first time. I was like, shit, I would have needed this 5 years ago, would have solved all our problems, and would have made our job so much faster. That's the thing, Data governance, important, but I really hope that this is something AI will take away from my plate, or other people will do that.
Yeah. Also, I have sometimes the feeling that, it does exist in other continents as well, governance, but for me, it somehow feels a bit German or European to me.
Yeah.
Because along the wording, governance, like it's an interesting term. I actually have, TNK, right? Fang, the singer,
sure.
right? Yeah. He's actually one of the next people in my podcast, so it would be interesting to hear what he has on that take. But very interesting perspective.
No, but I think it's also really, that is something. I can see that people that love working with data can really enjoy doing data governance. And I think it's important that those people do this because we need tools that are more approachable for everyone, right? There need to be tools that are more easy, more playful, stuff like this. So I think it's really, you need to have a certain level of not being annoyed by rules and filling. Because the thing is, being the data governance person is the most thankless or unthankful job because no one likes this. And I mean, in bigger companies, fine, but I only worked in startups. And in startups, there's also the thing, yes, we need data governance, but most data governance projects take a year. Who knows whether we still have a job in a year, right? So it's something that is necessary, but quite often it just doesn't fit because you're not able to do this easy enough, right? If there would be a tool like DBT for a data catalog, great, give it to me, no problem. But in the end, I want to do my normal job, and this should just happen on the side.
Yeah, totally reasonable perspective, right? Ideally, you would only really need it if you are like in a process and hey, okay, it's like inhibiting me, and then somehow it gets fixed as soon as possible instead of like proactively planning for every potential problem. I understand. It makes everything a bit slower than it necessarily should not necessarily that slow. That's true. Okay, interesting. I think normally I try to reach the 30, 35, 40 minute mark. So maybe one last thing that I'm thinking about is if there would be anything, especially for maybe younger people, because I think that's more the types of people that are looking up to this type of content. Is there anything from your past, from your current state of being, from interactions you had maybe also with younger people, where you would say these would be a few tips that you would really give people who are looking to get into the space, both AI, data science, or anything related that you think you can speak about?
I think something I always really enjoy myself with working with that stuff and also with other people is be hungry, be interested. So that's also very important when you look at that's important, has been important for the last 20 years where I was in this job. Never focus on one technique, never focus on one stack. Don't think that this is like the final best thing, because everything in data changes way too fast. Either it's legal implications. So my job was much nicer before 2018, and after 2018 in May it was less nice. Or even, what was the next step? iOS 14.5. Suddenly you had new privacy stuff, right? And sometimes this feels like this changes too much. You learn this whole thing, and then suddenly the whole stuff you learn is wrong. It's not wrong.
No,
you
but
just
irrelevant
have to be able, not even irrelevant. It's just you have to pivot and use what you know and apply to the next thing. And it's really use all the tools. I think it's funny because when ChatGPT started, I was like, yeah, that can't be great. I'm not going to use this. And then my wife used it for a few weeks and was like, you have to start using this. And I was like, that's bullshit. AI can't be that great. Yeah, she was right. I mean, and that's really a thing. Like, try out stuff, try out things. And I think this try out things is also very important. Don't expect that you can sit in the same job for the next 10 years. I mean, if you want to do this, great, but it's going to be boring because stuff changes way too fast around you. And what I realized is I changed my job twice for way less salary. No, 3 times now already because I made myself self-employed. And that was always a great decision. That was always perfect. So when I went out of academia, I did a pay cut to go into industry. When I went out of a job at a social network that is slowly dying and I really hated the leadership, I also took a pay cut, which was great. And I also took a small pay cut for the first few months when I went out of my job at FreeNow because I was like, I want to do something new. I want to do something new where I can learn new stuff, where I can apply new things, or where I can apply the things I know to new projects and by this learn again. So, I mean, in the end, I think it's don't stop learning and don't expect that you stop learning because I think that's really important. And also encourage that. I mean, it's not like if you want to learn something new and if you have a project and you have time for this, try out a new programming language, try out a new tool. I mean, in the worst case, it steals half a day and you realize, I wanted to try this tool. It looks awesome. It's complete garbage. It doesn't work. And that's also important, right? Because then next time you can, do something else.
Understood.
And don't be afraid. I think that's the other thing. Don't be afraid of this, right? Because I think if you work in this, people that start working in the data space and are not bad at their job, I think you will have not many problems in the future to find jobs anywhere. That's, I think it's always needed, and I can see that.
Mm-hmm. And maybe one last thing, because you kind of brought it up like indirectly, because I personally, and also friends of me, every once in a while, right? I think everyone has this like startup idea, wants to do something like self-employed, right? And then you're thinking like, but I have my day job, it pays well, right? And I like the people and, you know, the structure and the safety. But what would you say for you were like factors where you said, hey, that's actually worth taking maybe the pay cut to go for your own thing? That would be the last question I have.
I think, I mean, the last step, the being self-employed, is very easy. I had the buffer. So I was like, I don't have to work for a year because of exit stuff and severances and so on. I was like, hey, let's try this because I want to do this. I think this is interesting. I don't want to be the political play ball anymore because that's always something you are when you're in a higher data position. Yeah. And I mean, in the end, it's also the last 2 times it was like, this job is not making me happy. This is something where I can go to. It's a nice pay. It's very secure. I won't have any problems, but I don't enjoy it anymore. So that's it. I mean, that was also the case at FreeNow at the end because after 5 years, I realized, I changed this team. I built the team in a way that I'm not needed anymore, and I could do this for another 2 or 3 years. Take the money, go home. It's secure, but yeah, that's not me. I think it's really like listen to what makes you happy, and if you feel this doesn't make you happy anymore, then the money also doesn't make you happy, right? That's
true.
You forget money quite quickly, and also if you're not. And things also taking a pay cut in our jobs is also a very first world problem, right? Because if you take a pay cut from, I'm not sure, 80K to 75K or 70K, yes, you feel this, but it's not like you can't pay for your food anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
Or you can't go out. So yeah.
I think these are very good, beautiful ending words actually to focus on being happy and like being thankful for the stuff that you got and always like, you know, relativating your situation and understanding how privileged, right, we all are in these jobs.
Yes.
That's pretty true. Cool. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will enjoy hearing your thoughts.
I hope so.
Yeah. And I wish you a good rest of the day, of course, and hope everyone else to see you in the next video.
Cool, thanks.
Perfekt. So, ich habe ja mal Stopp gedrückt.